Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Did you consider changing the roof material, or was it based off the only things you could find in the area? Because I know in certain parts of Nigeria people use clay tiles because they soak up the heat a bit more.
Clay tiles.
Yeah.
Yep.
And because once you go out of the cities in many African countries, everything is aluminium sheets.
Yes.
Yeah.
And painting it white is something that I'm not sure how you convince them. Because I've suggested that to people and they were like, why would I paint the roof? And I'm like,
Well, they didn't. They bought them. They bought them pre-coloured.
yeah.
We did have to dissuade it from. We want blue. I mean, blue is a very popular colour, dark blue. So, the data logger and the test unit showed that the roof structure cooled down very rapidly. It's much closer to nighttime cooling, which is like something the holy grail. We wanted that. And even because of the radiation to the night sky, it actually cooled down 0.5 degree below the external temperature, which was a really, I thought, can we use that? Can we use that somehow? And in fact, there is some research in cool roofs, I don't know if you've come across it, looking at a particular type of materials which could be put on a roof, which cool down below external ambient using that property, which is actually very interesting for the future.
Yeah, because radiant cooling was used by ancient Iranians to make ice in the desert. It's that effective.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
The reason I wouldn't consider clay is generally, so this is a hot, humid climate, and you are trying to keep the building as light as possible because any additional thermal mass is heat that it's going to gain from the day and hold on to throughout the night. So that's kind of why aluminum sheets work, because they can release that heat very quickly. And also, it's not our main roof. We have a ceiling under it that we're also kind of looking to maybe see if insulating it will help or if it will make it the problem worse.
We did explore, so we did, of course, look at thatch, and but as you're probably aware, that's now a bespoke material that's quite hard to get. It's used for fancy restaurants and so on. So we're trying to meet people where they are. Where they are is sandcrete blocks made in the local village presses, sheet metal roofing, factories everywhere. We try to minimise the amount of timber. In fact, next design will minimise the amount of timber because there's no sustainable forestry schemes running and the forest cover's going. So it's a lot of it's opposite to here. Here, Passivhaus, no drafts, full of drafts. We got reasonable timber schemes here, no timber schemes there, maybe metal. So people can get more of their fair share of embodied energy, but they're pretty basic. There's not many layers in that building. It's not a carbon intensive building, even though it's concrete block, because there's not loads of layers and and the level of specification is modest. So this is where we come on to the next workshop. It'll be looking at if you do go down the Passivhaus route, you do go for air tightness, you do go for insulation, you're adding layers, cost, complexity, higher performance products, even if you look for the natural materials route. So coming to your point about insulating the ceiling, we did source a load of sisal grass product that's actually made into insulation and brought to this. Well, it's not made there, of course. The value is added outside of Africa. But so there are sisal grass becoming insulation. The company said, well, go to the source, go to the producer, and we can use the untreated sisal grass to experiment with ceiling insulation. As soon as I put it up there, thinking with data loggers, I thought, this is crazy. It's going to be full of animals in about, rodents and birds. I thought, this is real. I'm not going to even go there. So we took it all out again and just abandoned that experiment.
Because it's a balance. You have to see, the thermal is not isolated from all the other things that are happening. Yeah. Yep.
Can I ask Lai-Feng's question?
Yeah.
Okay. So Lai-Feng's question was, do you have a sense of how fast temperatures are rising in this country?
In Tanzania?
How do I pronounce it? Tanzania?
Well, we've been through this.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce it?
Tanzania.
Yeah, and that's how they usually say it. But then when they're around us, it's Tanzania.
Yeah.
And I've tried saying Tanzania here, and people just go, you pretentious. Just say it like it is. So I now decide different ways of.
I love this stuff. So and then the following question. So how fast is temperature rising?
Regional temperatures are
The
suggested.
second following question is: do you have a sense of how much of that is due to things like landscape changes, so for example, local deforestation and local urbanisation, and how much of it is background climate change?
So that's an interesting question, and it's part of what I want to do next. So, like I said, we're looking to future-proofing it with the air conditioning, but a big part of that is seeing what are the temperatures that they're going to face, how big of an air conditioner. And to do that, the way I've been doing it is I've been using climate models. So there are ones that predict the future with 1.5, 2 degrees, 5 degrees. So that's on my next step. I've already downloaded the resources, but I just haven't had the time to have a look, because you're correct. A lot of the times there's global impacts, but also there's regional impacts, and climate change is not homogeneous. Some regions will be affected more than others, and it's not just the impact on temperature, because we have a very big humidity problem. We need to see what's the impact on humidity, because it may be that we're not just going to have to use air conditioning, we're going to have to use a very big dehumidification cost.
What does cooling?
Yeah.
Then you just create rain inside
Exactly.
the building.
So there's two other things I'd add to that. So one is my understanding is that they're anticipating 4-degree rise in temperature across Tanzania. As you said, it'll affect different areas differently. But I can't remember the timing of that, but there are some regional predictions there. The other thing is, Karan, you can maybe help me out there, but clearly, self-evidently, the settlement patterns in that area has been removing forest for quite a long time. And we've noticed when you're there, you approach the wooded area and you can feel the temperature difference rapidly approaching. You go in there and there's a significant cooling under the tree areas, particularly in the deeper woodland.
And that is not surprising if you think about what leaves do. Leaves evaporate water.
Yep.
So you get humidity cooling. What's that?
Evaporative cooling.
Thank you. Evaporative cooling. You get evaporative cooling 10 or 15 metres above your head.
Yeah.
And then you get this wonderful downdraft of air with most of the water vapour going up.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant system. It would be very hard to...
Which is what, and you have tree planting plans, but around the houses we do have to be a bit careful about. We talk about wind avenues, so we're keeping wind avenues open. We also want to plant trees that are shading, but also productive, but not so productive. You get loads of monkeys and getting into the roof space and stuff. So there's a subtle balance. Yeah.
And also the trees shade the ground, and that reduces how much heat they retain. Your question?
I've got a question about adaptive comfort.
Yeah.
It's sort of, it's just a broader point. So obviously adaptive comfort is based on partly lifestyle and connection to the outdoors.
Yes.
And I wonder if the adaptive comfort of people living in highly urbanised areas might be different from the adaptive comfort of people in rural areas. And I wonder if there might be a aspirational driven move towards air conditioning. Similarly in the way, like I've got so many friends who I walk into their house, they've got heating on and they're wearing a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I'm like, why did you put a jumper on?
Yes.
How have you considered how adaptive comfort might change, or there might be a preference towards switching on the AC if you put an AC unit in versus...
So a lot of your points are something I'm going to discuss in the second workshop. Yeah, but I will answer your question. So adaptive thermal comfort relies on the occupant being active in the building, that they're not just sitting there turning on the AC, because in a lot of cultures, and the difference between rural and urban, like you say, in rural communities, adaptation is part of people's lifestyles. Like in the village where I used to live, you wake up, you put the beds back in because you slept outside. That's part of it. You have tea. In the midday, everyone has a nap because it's the hottest time of the day, and taking a nap lowers your metabolic energy. So it's part of the routine, that interaction with the outdoors. You go out, you go in, it's very movable. But in the cities, the air conditioner has kind of replaced that. And it becomes... that's why it becomes, when you're introducing it, you have to be very careful how you introduce it. Like, for example, don't introduce it in all the rooms, introduce it in specific rooms, make the occupants aware of its impact, because it has impacts on behavior, it has impacts on expectation. And like you said, here, putting the heating on with a shirt, the exact opposite happens in, for example, the Middle East, where I also grew up, where people put the AC on at 18 and then cover themselves with a heavy blanket in the middle of summer when it's 45 degrees outside. So, and honestly, the only way you could really discourage people from doing that is if they know the environmental impact of their decision and what it's doing, because otherwise, a lot of the times energy costs in these countries are not very high, so saving energy is not really a big incentive. So you try to explain it in an environmental sense, but optimally it's up to the user, honestly.
But there is a good, strong sense of environmental impact within, Kamran, would you say, in Tanzania, that, you know, people are pretty switched on about environmental impact, or is it in specific things like nature or animals, or is it a hard sell to tell people, that, you know, to say to people?
It all depends on the circumstance. Like if you've seen in the eco-village, for instance, the neighbours don't like the fact that we're a bit more open to biodiversity, and then so they feel uncomfortable with some of the animals. And also we've just had some locals who've cut down our trees that we planted 10, 15 years, 12 years ago. So that was more for their own energy use. As a whole, people are aware. It's just that circumstances just mean that they get on with their lives and they take whatever comes their way. So.
Yeah.
But our argument, I guess, is that if we can encourage people to design buildings to optimise adaptive comfort and to your zonal idea, your 3 zones, you know, when it's really hot, some rooms you just don't use temporarily. Some rooms are comfortable on the adaptive mode, but your core rooms do have AC, and then you can use it without telling them anything about environment.
Your question?
Okay. I had a student many years ago from Malaysia, and I discussed this. I discussed the indigenous, the historical modes of construction in that country, and asked why they are not still used. And the response was very straightforward, because people would nick my hi-fi system because they're so open. So one of the drivers here is urbanisation itself. As one knows from a village society where one knows the people who are taking one's hi-fi system, so they won't do it, to an urban situation where one doesn't know the people who will take one's hi-fi system, and so there's no impediment.
That was part of my research in Sudan about why people stopped using the outdoor space. Khartoum was a small city, everyone knew everyone, but once there's a lot of immigrations, a lot of people coming from war-torn areas, and the crime increased, so people just stopped using the outdoor areas, even when indoors it was hot. So the air AC introduction came later. They already started using the indoor more because of that security concern. And that's kind of something that I integrated in a framework that I'm designing, that security is a big issue. Your question? Yeah. You? Yeah. Sorry.
You spoke a lot about temperature comfort.
Yeah.
How is the building in terms of comfort on other levels? Noise?
Noise, yeah, good question. This kind of overlaps with this urbanisation thing. So the night I was there, so this is Muslim communities, quite extended, but there are, and I don't quite understand the community aspect of this, but there are Christian churches, evangelical churches dotted around, and presumably that supports a local Christian community. Anyway, they're very fond of singing lots of hallelujahs with microphones, like really loud. And the night I was there, you could hear this going on. It's like we went on and on until about 12 o'clock. And so, of course, if it had glass windows, if the aircon on and glass windows, that would have cut that out. No, it wasn't. It was faintly interesting, or too many hallelujahs for me, to be honest, at that time of night. But so potentially, of course, there is an issue. But what most people are building anyway in this around the eco-village and these settlements, there's no glass in the windows, so they have exactly the same issue. So it's not unusual what we've done in terms of sound. But coming back to that urbanisation issue and security, you notice that the windows, we basically had insect protection brief, security protection brief, and a suitable and a controllability of airflow brief. So we used, in fact, a laser cut metal sheet instead of wrought iron bars all over it. And that was our attempt at partial shading for some windows that might get exposed to sun, a surprisingly good view out actually through this perforated sheet. Security, you can't reach in and grab it. The kids inside feel secure, and that was a requirement of the children's home, in effect, a legal requirement. So we had a chance to play with that. So we're not particularly worried about the windows for security, but it does leave the ceiling issue security because it's just plasterboard. Now, Huda told me some hair-raising stories about some of her relatives in the recent civil war going on in Sudan, and her sister had to be evacuated from a house where bullets were coming through the roof, and it really made me think about, we probably shouldn't be designing buildings that need lightweight plasterboard and studs because you could get in there very easy. So if we can get some support together to get funding for Huda to do some more modelling, I think we're going to model a concrete slab or a steel with a bit of concrete on it. Because of that, it doesn't feel robust.
Yeah, but at the same time, we have to be careful.
Yeah.
Thermal mass. We have to make it as thin as possibly to achieve that security goal. Because that's kind of what environmental design is. You're balancing all these different needs, and it's impossible to meet all of them.
Someone over here
I
had a
was thinking about the noise of 10 people sharing.
Well, that's another good question.
Internally, I was actually meaning.
Yeah. Do you want to say something on that, Come on, about the
just
dormitory
to-
design?
Yeah, there is. I think this is what the 10 girl. I mean, they're what 4-3-4 room. If this is the data we're going to collect from them, how they feel about it.
Yeah.
The bit which I think they may have an issue with is, although there's no windows, like psychologically when you're inside and the lights on inside and you can't see outside, and they're all hijab wearing girls, and so I think over time and also like I think we will think about putting blinds or
I think we've missed a fact that the internal walls between the bedrooms, so basically the concept is a dormitory semi-divided with perforated masonry walls in order to keep the airflow moving across the whole space, across the kids' bodies at night. And the idea is they may choose to use bed nets, but bed nets are a little hot heat island. You hate bed nets, don't you? So the insect protection is on the external fabric, and you get maximum coolth moving across you. But the internal walls are perforated, so if they have the Venetian blinds turned for maybe privacy or air control, the internal walls, we decided not to put more Venetian blinds in, but to have decorative glass beads and things to just add a bit of a layer of privacy between the rooms. But in terms of chatting and talking, you felt that it was something that they were used to, and it's not an issue of, because it's a dormitory, but it perhaps might be confused by the fact we've subdivided it so they're actually, as I said, rooms of 4 beds for kids.
I mean, there was lots of echo, and we haven't furnished it yet.
There's no furnishing.
So once we start putting furnishing, furniture, and fans and things like that, I think it will be drown out any voice or people talking through hearing. But this is things we'll pick up over the next year.
To your point, sorry, I went to a boarding school in Nigeria, and it was the same setup, and we were 6 or 8 to a room.
Oh.
Right? Linoleum tiles, cement board rooms, right? And there were some days it was so hot we all just slept in the courtyard because it was too hot. Because again, it was built by the British Embassy, so the rooms were designed to be as private as possible, but it just did not work for what we required. So I think there are a number of times when it got so hot in Kwara State that we literally just slept on the corridor next to the colony because it was just too hot to stay in there. And I'm not sure what age these kids are, but in my boarding school it was from 12 to 17, and I don't ever recall noise being an issue because you always that's what children do. They run around, they make noise and everything, and if the gospel people are doing their hallelujah or their prayer warrior to 12 p.m, the ladan calls from the mosque, it is all part of it.
Yeah.
That whole
It's all part of the culture.
It's all part of the culture. So when you're going playing football with your friends and you hear the ladan from the mosque, you're like, okay guys, time for me to go. So all of that noise, as you say, because it's something that they try to implement in Lagos, Nigeria, where the governor said religious buildings should not announce any prayers and it just didn't work because that is you taking culture and saying, oh, we're just gonna try and eliminate that to create this different understanding. And the good thing about growing up in an environment where everyone runs around and they can talk to, it builds that sense of community. So isolating those people in a way by saying, oh, everything has to be private, then divides the community you're trying to build.
Very
Nice.
much, because I
Very
grew up in Hong Kong. It's very, very hot. This is how many years ago now? I was just saying, you know how old I am.
A previous millennium.
We had no air conditioning in the first part of my growing up, you know, and like you, we try really hard to keep cool in summer because I was just about my question is you've got stable seasonal climate because you can plan. So we have put away certain bedding and it completely changed in summer. And again, about going to the privacy problem, I never understood what privacy is about until I came to this country when I was 21 years old. Like this gentleman was talking about, we have sense of community at night. I mean, I was talking about whether you design the houses or building also involved with your client, your participants. You know, I would like to involve them if I were an architect to actually see their lifestyle. Because I remember when I was in Hong Kong as a child, we spent most of the time in the evening outside, actually outside, sitting out there and chatting with our adults, and you know, and listen to my mother and my uncle, and it's like a fireside chat, you know, but it's no fire, and just it's never a problem until we went to bed, and we don't always make children to go to bed at 7, so we actually stayed up until 11, 12. It's really, really cool. And I remember our bedroom, again, got my mother and my father and 3 of us, but in fact 7 of us eventually. We don't have proper doors. You actually a lattice of partition, and then just, how do you say, a curtain. And the wind would just blow through those lattices. And it was hot, but as time went on, Hong Kong became more and more westernized. Concrete and everything, particularly your bedding. I still complain about. The problem we're getting very, very hot is because we have these mattresses. They are thermal mass absorbing. At night, if it's hot here in England, you don't want to sleep in it.
Not a solid, cool floor.
Yeah, you need a cool floor. Our bed, we never had mattress. We have what we call bamboo mattress, so you get airflow. So again, it's about going back to the heritage culture. And to me, we don't want air conditioning, so that people, and then I have to look at how many days, you know, that we suffer in the UK of overheating. And we worked out some strategy, didn't we? And over the years, and shaking seemed to work very well, and not actually open the window. People try to open the window up in the 2nd floor, but the hot air just coming in, so you shade and close the window, and it's cooler. And we do have a Dyson little fan. And it didn't take long to get us cool, but I think if we can, I don't think we can just swap, you know, the bedding, or you know, or the mattress in summer, we probably cope better without installing cooling.
So some of the points that you've mentioned were a part of my research that.
Have you explained you did a PhD? I'm not sure you have. Have you?
I'm not able to think, I'm just thinking about.
Yeah. So what you're experiencing? So I did a PhD in Sudan about air conditioning and how people are using the buildings, and my key finding was it's part of a cultural change. The air conditioner is just a symptom of that. So a lot of what you're describing, a lot of the older people in Sudan remember like that. They lived without air conditioner. They were used to hotter climates. They were more resilient. But with younger generations who are more westernized, who are more private. So with the older generations, because it was a tougher time, they were used to sharing resources as a way to survival. So there is no privacy is frowned upon because that means you're being selfish. You're holding a resource to yourself. But as people became more westernized, more urbanized, economic conditions were better, people start to have more aspirations. And with the younger generations, like even, for example, the introduction of the TV had a huge impact on these people. So they became from more community-based, where people spend time outside in the streets with each other, to spending more time each one in their individual homes. And then the phone is like the next thing, where the younger generations, if there's Wi-Fi, every person stays in their own room. And no, everyone wants the privacy of their own room, and these are just the younger generations. So that's something in my research that includes that you have to acknowledge that yes, that way of living was really nice, but in this condition, this place, they're not using it. And in rural places, they are still living that way, and that if you're going to design for there, how you design there is going to look different than how you're going to design an urban climate, even though environmental wise they're the exact same, but culture and how people use the building is a key part.
Maybe your 3-zone model might actually allow some diversity of culture through the building. Somebody's talking about how buildings influence people, maybe.
Yeah. So the model that is my research output is that we use mixed mode buildings where because you're going to accommodate because we live in a very extended household where there are older people, there are younger people, there are people who want different levels of privacy. So what I was suggesting is using a mixed mode building where you create zones that cater to different needs. So the house becomes, as a whole, comfortable and suitable all around, but different areas cater to different times and different needs.
This is going to be a conversation with the Passivhaus Institute, who we are gently prodding in ways that are probably irritating them at the moment, but they are, well, they haven't quite engaged yet, but we have had an early conversation. Yeah. I've completely lost track of the time. I'm assuming is it 20 minutes past lunch started? What time is it?
12:45, it's about 4 minutes past lunch.
Oh, well, perfect.
But there was one question over there. You had a question?
Well, I don't want to keep you from the lunch, but so we're going to ask it and maybe talk about it separately when we done something. But I was interested in the vernacular architecture of the area, and as the sort of conversation is evolving, it occurs to me that there's actually quite a lot of new understanding in terms of, I suppose, what was the vernacular in space and time. Might be a sort of another way of looking at it, and how does that relate to the designs that you came up with, and whether there's inspiration. And I'm trying to think of a delicate way of phrasing this. But okay, it is probably very indelicate and.
You're going to say something about colonials or something, are you? Just spit it out.
I mean, I'm acutely aware of my whiteness and maleness and affluence, I suppose sort of a question for you, Andy, but also people that you work with. Was that present as a sort of?
Yeah, it was like me and Kamran were doing good cop, bad cop thing. You know, he was blatantly using my whiteness and my Britishness to get what he wanted. So, okay, vernacular, yeah. We were sensitive. We have a laugh about it, but we're sensitive to it when we were working over there, as best we could be. But so the vernacular side of it. So we did the desk studies and stuff. We looked at historic use of. It depends on the area. The area happened to be is a rock substrate with deep sand. So it's a semi-desert sort of region. A bit further away, a bit more clayey. So then you get wattle and daub type clay soils and plastering soil. So in the region we were, it was there was some reasonable clay for plastering, for example, but no rammed earth construction. We did find some potential soil, but there's nothing going on in that respect. So all the buildings I saw were sandcrete blocks with timber roof structures and metal roofs and concrete, in situ cast concrete, and that is now the modern. Well, I was to call it vernacular, but it's the modern form of construction. We decided to meet people where they were at, but we're also aware that there's been a lot of land clearance, although the village settlements do leave trees for the gardens. So not complete desolation, apart from the commercial developments where forest is bulldozed and AC reliant small low ceiling bungalows are being built for sale by whatever, international capital funded developments, Chinese capital, whatever. So that was painful. Zanzibar was a good example, wasn't it, Kamran, of acres and acres of beautiful forest bulldozed and these shit bungalows with aircon and just horrible, just, oh my God, I mean, seeing that pace of fossil fuel capitalism development, it's horrifying, basically. So back in the lovely eco-village, so we met people where we were. We looked, to be honest, at colonial architecture, which didn't do a half bad job of understanding good-sized windows and airflow and high ceilings. That was an influence. Francis Kéré, famous architect, very inspiring with his ventilated roof design and the modern architecture. So he's working in brain's gone. West Africa. What's the very dry arid? Where's Francis Kéré from?
Burkina Faso.
Yeah. He's using rammed earth and earth blocks, steel roofs, metal reinforcing bar space grids over the top, and doing some very beautiful things. I don't know if they're working. They look like they should work, but and it's a different climate, I guess. It's a lot drier, isn't it? So that was very inspirational, actually.
Yeah, I would say colonial architecture is beautiful.
Yeah.
I used to work in Hong Kong. I worked for the Royal Hong Kong Police Force, and I was working in Yamati Police Station. It's a beautiful colonial. It's still there because it's got heritage value for the British colony. It's beautiful, and the ceiling is very high, and that's why I didn't feel cold, a little hot there in the summer. And there were many other colonial architecture, like in Macau, like Portugal, where Portuguese architecture, like the big veranda, as you walk right down the street. It's filled with the climate that is there, and you can evaluate it. It's the new real corporate capitalism who want profit first rather than anything else. That is, damaging of the local environment. And as I said, if you have chance at all, when you've been to Hong Kong, there's some beautiful architecture. Probably I've been deliberately visiting. And I hope that you understand what I'm trying to say.
I do, because that was also part of my research, that colonialism in Sudan was the first attempt to stay indoors and be cool. The local way was, if it's too hot inside, we're going to stay outdoors. But the colonialists had their way of living indoors, so they tried to actually build a building that was comfortable indoors. So yes. Yeah.